Hello, I'm Andrew from EDG Architecture, and today I'm going to be looking at the process we follow to appraise whether a site is suitable for development, particularly residential development. So the first step we take is, let's have a look, see if we can find a site. Simplest way to do this is, if you pass something in the car and you're interested or you think it's got potential, then have a look on Google Maps. The one that we're looking at today is this small site here on the edge of Ripon, which, if we were to zoom in, it's a fairly open plan site. It's surrounded by development. We've got residential areas down here, we've got the cricket club, the school, there's new development going on this side, and it's fairly close to the town centre as well, which is a great sign, really. So the first thing we tend to do is we look for a postcode for the area. Easiest way to do that, there's very helpfully a property here that has a listing on Google, and when we click that, it straight away gives us the postcode HG42QL. So what we would then do with that is we would go to something called In My Area. It used to be called Search My Property, and it's on the local authority website. And once we've done that, pop the postcode in, and it brings up a map of the site there. And at the bottom of that, we have several tabs that we can turn on and off, so we can see there's quite an area of protected trees, and there's a few additional ones within local properties as well. Importantly, we can see that there are listed buildings close by. So the impact of this is that any development we produce on this site, the impact of that on the listed building will be a material planning consideration. So in simple terms, if we build something that obscures views to or from the listed buildings, if we build something that's out of character, if we build something that's taller than those buildings, chances are it's going to be refused. Similarly, we can see it's slap bang in the middle of a conservation area, which sets a few alarm bells ringing, and straight away makes me think this is going to be a fairly high risk application. The conservation area means that, in simple terms, we're going to be very restricted in terms of what we can build, the style of what we can build. It's going to probably be fairly traditional design. We're not going to get something through that's very unusual. Other things we can check: smoke control areas, the stray, which, if you're not from Harrogate, is a protected area of land, and AONB, which is area of outstanding natural beauty. Thankfully, it doesn't tick any of those, so we're good for that one. Okay, so armed with this, the other thing we can tell is that there's a river fairly close by, which that instantly makes me think, are we going to be on a floodplain? And if we are, then flood risk assessments, it's becoming more and more unlikely it's going to be suitable. So the way to check that is we go to the flood map for planning, which is a government website, and if we use either the postcode or the easting and northing, that'll bring us up to the area. So to find the easting and northing, if you don't know, go to Grid Reference Finder, pop in the latitude and longitude, which you can get from Google just by right-clicking on the site, and that's these two numbers here. Pop that in, hit go, and then just below here it would give you latitude and longitude, which we can use to input into the flood risk map. And pop them in, hit continue, and it brings you up to this interactive map, which, we zoom in on the site, and mess of this already. If we just put a very simple polygon around here, and I'm going to overdo this just to show you something. And hit continue. Straight away this tells us that we're in flood zone 3, which means it's a very high risk for flooding. And when we zoom back down to the plan, we can see that actually it's only the very bottom corner that is in flood risk 3, flood zone 3. So what we then tend to do is, if we go back to the map, and if we change the red line boundary, which, what that means is when we submit planning, we would submit the red line boundary for less of the land than what we're actually applying for. And all of a sudden we're in flood zone 1, which flood zone 1, read it there, flood zone 1 does not need a flood risk assessment, so it's deemed 0 to next to no risk of flooding, which is great news. So for this site, that's a good sign. Obviously there's other factors that would probably rule this site out already. Once we've done this step, the next thing that we tend to have a look at is the planning history. So this one's very important. If you go to your local authority and just search for public access, you'll be able to find all the historic planning applications for a site. I tend to use the map search just so I can be sure I'm getting the right patch of land. And then once you've clicked that, if you change the filters to all time, it gives you every planning application that's on record. So for this site, I can see, this is 1 of 7. And if I flick through them all, we can see that there's 7 planning applications, and 4 of these are for residential development, which have all been refused. There's 2 others for classifying the land as open landscape, which, again, these are all fairly negative signs. On another site, if we'd seen that there'd been a refusal, and if we could come up with a strategy to get it through planning, then there's a high chance that the landowner would consider a joint venture with us, whereby we put all of our time and experience into this for free, on a condition that we get a cut of the sale price at the end once planning's granted. It's a risk to us. It costs us thousands to submit these applications, and we'd only do it if we thought it had a good chance of approval. The very last thing to check, we know that this site's probably not going to happen, but the very last thing to check is greenbelt. So planning within the greenbelt is highly restricted. You're generally restricted to brownfield sites or conversions or redevelopment sites, infill sites, which is within the town boundary or village boundary or whatever it happens to be, and surrounded by other dwellings. The only other thing we can really do within the greenbelt is paragraph 80 homes, which are houses of outstanding architectural significance, or we can do things under permitted development. So, permitted development includes things like your Class Q bond conversions, Class R bond conversions, that type of thing, where it's a process to follow, and as long as you tick the boxes, it's difficult for them to refuse it. So, I think in general, this site we can say is going to be a very high risk site. It's not one that we would be looking to pursue. We just think that the time that will be taken is far too significant. But good news, it's not in the greenbelt, but this one isn't for us. But that's the process we follow to appraise any site at a very high level. If we took the next step on it, we'd be looking at the direction of sunlight, whether there's mature trees, any impact from ground instability and geology, whether it's a mining field. We would take it to a much further step if it was a suitable site to have a look at. But hopefully that gives you a very, very high level overview of how we look at a site and what is suitable for us. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks.